you want to move to New York and become an artist, or maybe you want to join a band, but it's a pretty hostile economic climate for those in the creative industry. Right now, there are 2 million Americans working as artists, most of them struggling to make ends meet. There are also people making piles of money, so it is all worth the risk. It's our subject tonight, the value of creativity, and this is the business of life. Hello, I'm Michael Moynihan, and welcome to the business of life. Look, there's never been a better time to be an artist, right? Recording is cheaper than ever, bands have direct access to fans, record labels are no longer gatekeepers. And the same is true for visual art. More people are choosing to be professional artists, and last year the art market reached a record $66 billion in global sales. But who's really benefiting from this brave new world? With music sales in the toilet, streaming services that barely pay bands, and the art market dominated by its very own 1%, does it pay to be an artist? As always, we're going to break down the issue using facts, figures, dollars, and cents. And I'm joined by a panel of brilliant experts uniquely qualified to answer this question: what is the value of creativity? Ryder Ripps is an artist, co-founder of the art community Dump FM, and according to Wired magazine, the Indiana Jones of the internet. His work has appeared at PS1, the New Museum, and the Royal College of Art. Sasha Frere-Jones has been the pop critic for The New Yorker since 2004. In the 1990s, he fronted the band Ooey, am I pronouncing that right?
Yes.
And Pitchfork called you guys intellectually muscular and expectedly throbbing. I don't even know what that means. Glenn O'Brien was the editor of Interview magazine, a bureau chief at Rolling Stone, and editor-at-large for High Times. He produced and starred in Glenn O'Brien's TV Party, which David Letterman called the greatest TV show ever, and he's right about that. So let's begin with our first topic, joining a band, and let's bring up our first number. 99% of recording artists share 23% of global artist revenue. That means 1% of recording artists share 77% of total revenue. Who in the audience here has played in a band or is in a band currently? Have you made money off of music? And if so, how much? And tell us how to do it.
Money has occurred. How much is kind of nebulous. I don't
Money
know.
has occurred.
Yeah, meaning, you know, it's not a windfall, but it's a functioning outfit, you know?
But you can't make a living off of this.
I mean, you can, it just depends on your standard of living, to be honest. I mean, you can certainly,
Depends how much
honestly,
you like ramen.
this is an age-old
exactly.
thing with being an artist. You
Yeah.
can do it if you're willing to sort of cut certain corners.
You have to delude yourself into thinking you can keep doing this.
The music business was never about fairly compensating musicians and making sure that they ate. It was, you know, a way to get a widget out of them that you could then sell. That game has changed, and it's probably actually a better deal for a smaller number of people. And by that I mean artists who own and control their own work and get paid in different ways.
Let's look at our next number here. This is Taylor Swift's 1989. That's the only album in 2014 to go platinum by November. A bit of context here. Of the same period in 1989, 18 albums went platinum or multi-platinum. I mean, you can't make a ton of money, selling records anymore. There used to be kind of a middle tier, wasn't there? People could sell a little bit of some records here and there and make a decent living, right?
There's X amount of money coming in on these widgets that are being sold. The band is necessarily not seeing any of that money because they always owe the label money. So at a certain point, they've made 3 albums and they say, why do I still live in the same apartment and I don't have any more money than I had before? And we went on tour and after a month we have $1,000. Like, what was that?
Well, let's look at one of the other ways they do it now. From mid-2013 to mid-2014, we saw a 42% increase in the use of streaming services and a decline in album sales of 14.9%. Let's bring up a next stat, which kind of feeds into this. This is astonishing, $12,359. That's the total domestic royalties Pandora paid out for Avicii's Wake Me Up. as of November 2014. And keep in mind, this song was streamed in America 168 million times. So the old ways of screwing people have just been replaced by new ways of screwing people, right?
We don't know what anyone's deal with Spotify is. We don't know what anyone's deal with Pandora. They're all individual.
Even if the amount of money is double that, the disparity is enormous, right? I mean, if we're shifting
Absolutely.
from buying physical units to actually streaming stuff online, I mean, this is not a way, even if you're super successful, to make a living, is it?
I mean, I think this kind of thing has forced the record industry to consider what they're actually selling. So, and I'm surprised it took them so long to realize this, that they're selling something that is ephemeral and metaphysical. And the thing that they're selling isn't a piece of furniture anymore. It's not an LP. It's not a CD. It's the experience of listening to music. And now, we're still in this era, and we've been in it for over 10 years now, of trying to figure out how to actually monetize that and how to translate a number like 168 million plays into monetary value. And a lot of it has to do with brokering. And a lot of it has to do with how we evaluate any creative service.
These numbers are depressing if, true in some way, but, there's an upside of this, and we'll take a look at this next number. 20 million, that's the number of songs on Spotify, and we should note here that 4 million of those songs have never been played. Your television show is a cable access show in the early 80s. That's getting music to people that are a small community that are trying to hear stuff that's very, very hard to hear in commercial radio, very, very hard to get in other places. Now, open the laptop, 2 seconds, you have this entire world of music that is available to you, right?
But I don't know any musicians who became musicians to make a lot of money. I mean, I'm sure there are people who've lived under that delusion, but I think it's like, I want to get laid, I want to sleep late in the morning, I don't want to have to work in a cubicle, I want to, I want to go
really
to
should become a
Chicago.
musician, should I?
I think that people go into creative jobs for other reasons, because if you really want to make money, you become a Wall Street criminal.
We actually have a boring Bureau of Labor Statistics data on how much musicians earn. Let's look at them. $132,028. That's the starting salary for a musician in the Boston Symphony Orchestra. 50% of US orchestras are staffed entirely by unpaid volunteers. Now let's go right into our next stat. $23.50 per hour. That's the median pay for a musician in the United States, and we should also note that musicians are 2.4 times less likely to have health insurance than the rest of us. Why aren't we more like Europe? Should we not be subsidizing people if they want to do these things? Would there be better art?
I just came from a fantastic festival in Poland called the Unsound Festival. Amazing blend of people, a really inspiring week, and everyone got along with everyone else. A lot of that money came from the Polish government, and you see that when you try to plan a festival. It's never, let's go to that state fund. It's always like, is Absolute going to come through and sponsor this weird thing we want to do,
Yeah, I mean, Glenn, you look at the sort of, people think of the golden age in so many ways of music in New York. Bands that were on TV Party, like James Chance and these people that did not have an apparatus to support them, no subsidies, no nothing, not making a ton of money. I mean,
but hardly anybody made any money. I mean, I remember when Blondie had their first #1 hit, that week, Chris Stein borrowed $100 from me.
Did he ever pay it
And
back?
I was poor, and I said, don't you have a lot of money now? And he said, no. And I said, well, where's the money? He said, the company says it's in the pipeline. And I think the money's still in the pipeline.
It's still, is your money from Chris Stein still in the pipeline? Did you ever get it back?
We worked it out. We worked something out.
Well, now people often say, you don't make money on records. As we were saying, we make it many other ways, and one of those is concerts and shows that people. Let's look at this number: 400%. That's the average increase in the price of a concert ticket since 1981. We should note that there was a 23% increase in concert attendance from 2012 to 2013. Playing shows, that's where you selling merchandise, playing shows, getting stuff at the door. Is that where most people
100%.
can make money, right?
Yeah, that and YouTube views and the ads. That's the thing is bands are realizing they are TV networks. They are platforms. Brands can target their advertisements by bands. The conversion that is being earned through advertising on YouTube is insanely high.
Give an example though, just like if you are like a kind of a middle tier band and like, you get 40,000 views of a video of yours on YouTube, like what's a sense of like what you can earn off of that?
40,000 views?
Yeah, just,
Nothing.
I mean, nothing.
Not
so
a lot.
even though, like, so you have to be pretty big.
Oh yeah, you're not going to be like talking about real money until it's over 1 million views.
When my kids want to listen to a song, they play the YouTube clip. They're not going to open an app and like find this. They don't care about that. And interestingly, a record label I know, a very respected, big but independent label, but very healthy, they started putting up entire album streams on YouTube, and people were like, "That's crazy! Aren't you giving away the record?" And he was like, "No, that penny economy is paying."
We are glued to these platforms. They're inherent. They're not. We don't have these experiences of, the record store. Even the concert experience is a very social one. It's all about getting the Instagram shot. It's all about I was here, and people view these things through their phone. Whether they're there or whether they're not there.
All right, let's check in with the audience and give them an opportunity to ask a few questions of our panel.
Hi, my name is Navona. My question is, today there's so many different ways you can buy music. They always talk about voting with your wallet. So how should I buy music to get the money to the artist the best, like directly into the hands of the artist?
Unfortunately, with a lot of ways you could be buying music, there's very little way of knowing if the artist is going to see, or how much money the artist will see, if any. Bandcamp is a platform where usually the artist has the fewer number of layers between them and the audience. I mean, a lot of people on Bandcamp are simply the band. So when you pay $10 for Dawn of MIDI, they get $10. Sometimes there'll be a label, so maybe you'll split it between two parties, but that's one of the only platforms where I would be comfortable saying they're getting the money. Or sometimes people will set up a website. But even when you go to the merch table at a show and you feel like you're giving them $10, we had to buy those CDs from the label, and so there's really there's no point at which, unless you just simply walk up to a guy and be like, "Here's $10," that they're getting that money.
Cool, thank you.
Sure.
My name's Rachel. My question is, do you think that Napster was the sort of disruptive force that may have led to some of the changes in the way that musicians and the music industry make their money? Or do you think it was more inevitable because of the widespread expansion of internet access?
The music industry failing to adopt new technology, and they sort of dug their own grave. Like, they should have realized really early on that they're not actually selling CDs, they're selling music. And it doesn't really matter what medium it's on. What matters is the medium that people can access it, that the easiest is actually the most relevant, because it's music that you're selling. It's not a plastic disc, which is basically a coaster. So if they had realized that early on, I think they would have been first to market with a lot of these platforms that are now hugely profitable, iTunes and YouTube. And now you're seeing it again with FLAC technology. The adoption rate is so low, partially because no one's figured out how to really monetize it.
So let's move on to our next topic where, there's lots and lots and lots of money. What is art worth? And let's bring up our first number. $265 billion. That's the estimated value of privately held art in the United States. $1.78 billion. That's the total art sales made by Christie's and Sotheby's in just 7 days this November. You're somebody who made a film with Jean-Michel Basquiat. You knew him, you owned lots of his work. Was there any anticipation, say in 1980, that the art world would be such a thing for kind of the 1%?
I don't think people really thought about art as an investment so much until a famous New York collector named Robert Scull sold his pop art collection, sold things for $100,000, which was like unheard of. And Robert Rauschenberg was drunk and punched him in the stomach. And, it was like a big scandal. But, that was just way, way long ago. I think what happened is that, like, after the financial crisis, people thought, well, with all these, like, derivatives and all these weird financial instruments, maybe art is the thing, because it can't, the art market really can't be regulated. It's kind of inscrutable. I mean, you have to be really far inside to know how it works.
My name is Robert, and my question is for somebody who's not a high-level art collector, what is the investment value in buying works from less known artists or investing in art funds?
I think the idea of investing in an art fund is really disaster waiting to happen.
Glenn, what is an art fund for those of us who don't know?
Auction houses got in a lot of trouble financing and advancing money, and now we have independent financiers, some of whom were Wall Street raiders, who are lending money or they're buying people's collections and renting them back to them. All these kind of really complicated deals that are based on art, which is a market that's only determined by taste.
You know, on this issue of collectors, let's look at this next number, 600,000. That's the estimated number of mid to high level art collectors in the world. It meant the average billionaire holds in art is $31 million worth of art. The things that I hear about and the average person hears about are, you know, a triptych for $130 million, Jeff Koons' piece that's $67 million. How does that trickle down to the average artist?
I think there is a much larger speculative market right now. And so what that has done is created a kind of like drive for a lot of young artists to participate in the speculative market and to, you know, drive up the price of a very young artist. You know, maybe someone in their 20s can sell a piece for $100,000, and it has everything to do with the secondary market and this wave of collectors who have methodically figured out how to control and pump up the price of art through, you know, the same tactics that have been happening in Christie's and Sotheby's since, you know, maybe the 60s or something like that, which is, you know, price fixing and planning how much to bid and you know, consorting with your friends on, you know, who's going to be valuable and who's not.
Let's look at this next number. After Andy Warhol's death, 94 Brillo boxes were produced and incorrectly authenticated as his work. The highest price of one Brillo box before the forgery was revealed, $208,695. Glenn, you were in the universe of the factory, were you?
Yes, I was. I think what was interesting actually about the pop artists was that there was this moment when, you know, people were making really interesting prints and multiples, and they thought about art as being for everybody and not something that was going to turn out to be worth $50 million. And I think that's kind of what's missing today is that, you know, art should be made for everybody. It shouldn't just be what they call Veblen goods, which are the things that operate in the reverse of supply and demand. It's things people buy because they're ridiculously expensive. It's, you know, the most decadent form of conspicuous consumption.
Let's look at this next number. Half of Americans expect that in the next 50 years, computers will be able to create art indistinguishable from that made by humans. When the Baghdad Museum was looted in 2004, there was an argument made that said, we have high resolution copies of all this stuff. Do we need the originals? You know, what is the purpose of having that individual piece when we have such sort of detailed reproductions of them? I mean, what is the importance of having that individual piece?
In the case of, you know, Warhol or something where it's a screen print, you obviously can reproduce a screen print in meticulous detail, and it would be the exact same thing. And I think part of, you know, that work in particular is about the mechanicalization of art and to expose the truth of society that we live with right now, which is the truth that the idea is the thing. So what is the value of something that can be reproduced? It's the value that it's an honest-to-God example of the ultimate origin of an idea.
How many people here regularly go to museums, and I guess on a sort of more specific level, go to galleries? Actually being clapped for doing. So that's most people. Most people go.
A lot more people than in bands.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. There's one person in a band, but everybody goes to galleries to see these things. All right, let's look at our next number. Out of 2 million arts graduates, 10% make their primary earnings as working artists. The median income for craft and fine artists is $44,000. Ryder, did you go to art school?
Yeah.
I mean, is it necessary to go to art school for young people who have this desire to move to New York and make their way as an artist?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not?
No.
So was it a waste of time for you?
I don't think time is ever wasted. That's a decision you have. Anyone can decide if they want to make their time valuable or not, but it's definitely a waste of money. I don't think that the skills required to be a creative individual, whether you're trying to sell music or whether you're trying to sell your art or whether you're trying to get a name for yourself as a designer, are skills that you can learn from reading media theory or reading art theory or anything like that. Of course, having an understanding of art history will help you make better art, but that's not going to help you sell art. What's going to help you sell art is understanding psychology and understanding sociology and really talking to people and figuring out what their desires are and branding. And so creating value for something that is more or less subjective to many people, especially if it's a concept, is the art in and of itself. And usually the physical object is just the manifestation of that.
Hi, I'm Kathleen. So Ryder, I really liked what you said earlier about you don't have to go to art school to be a successful artist. But I guess my question is, what is the value of even getting a BFA? Or is there an alternate creative cultivation system that, like the factory or something like that, that is a better model?
I think almost all the successful artists I know were somebody's assistant. That's where you really learn, I think. It's really kind of one of the last sort of apprenticeship situations that exists. I also think that there are certain art schools that are really good, like the New York Academy of Art, which doesn't teach theory really, but which just teaches studio practices.
I get emails all the time from people I don't know who are just soliciting advice, and I'm extremely flattered by that. And I think especially today, where it's not that hard to figure out someone's contact info, or you don't have to call them. It can be kind of impersonal, this sort of engagement through the internet. And so just sending emails and asking people what they think of things, or just asking really honest, humble advice. If you don't feel proactive about doing that, you shouldn't be pursuing a creative job anyways, because it's not like anyone's going to hand you anything, because no matter what you make, it's you have to create the value for it and explain it in a way that people will understand.
All right, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining us today, Ryder, Sasha, and Glenn. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time on The Business of Life.
Business of Life is made possible by Better Money Habits. It's a free resource that helps you build practical knowledge and take control of your finances. Powered by Bank of America. See more at bettermoneyhabits.com.